crush steel like it was made of paper, and where, if something goes wrong, no one is coming to save you. On June 18, 2023, 5 people climbed into a tiny carbon fiber submersible named Titan. Their destination wasn't just the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. It was one of the most famous shipwrecks in history, the Titanic. For the passengers, it was supposed to be the adventure of a lifetime, a chance to see history with their own eyes, a story they would tell for the rest of their lives. Instead, it became one of the most haunting deep-sea tragedies of the modern era, because nearly 2.5 miles beneath the surface, there are no second chances, no emergency exits, no rescue helicopters, no divers waiting nearby, just endless darkness and pressure beyond human imagination. To understand why this story terrified millions around the world, you first have to understand the ocean itself. Because despite satellites mapping distant planets, we've explored only a small fraction of Earth's oceans. The deep sea remains one of the least understood places on our planet. It is silent, freezing, and completely unforgiving. Down there, the rules of the surface no longer exist. At around 12,500 feet beneath the Atlantic, where the Titanic rests, the pressure reaches nearly 380 times the pressure at sea level. Imagine the weight of dozens of fully loaded jumbo jets pressing against every square meter of the submersible. Every single second. The ocean doesn't care how much money you have. It doesn't care about experience, or confidence, or ambition. It only follows the laws of physics, and physics never makes exceptions. The Titan wasn't a military submarine. It wasn't operated by a government agency. It was an experimental tourist submersible designed to take paying passengers to one of the world's most legendary wrecks. The journey cost around $250,000 per seat. For many, it sounded like the ultimate bucket list adventure. For others, it sounded like a gamble. Long before the dive, engineers and experts had raised concerns about the vessel's design and safety. Some believed those warnings deserved more attention. Others believed innovation always comes with risk. No one knew that, within hours, the world would be desperately waiting for news from somewhere beneath one of the darkest places on Earth. And then, the impossible happened. Communication with Titan suddenly stopped. No distress call. No explanation. Just silence. At first, people hoped it was a temporary communications issue. Maybe the sub had simply lost signal. Maybe it would reconnect in a few minutes. But minutes became hours. And hours became a global race against time. Because everyone knew one terrifying fact. The people inside carried only a limited supply of breathable air. With every passing second, the countdown had already begun. And somewhere, far below the Atlantic, no one knew exactly where Titan was, or what had happened to it. For thousands of years, the ocean has hidden its deepest secrets beneath a blanket of darkness. From the surface, the Atlantic can look calm, almost peaceful. Gentle waves, a cool breeze, an endless blue horizon. But beneath that thin layer of water, an entirely different world begins. As Titan started its descent on the morning of June 18, 2023, daylight faded quickly. Within minutes, the sunlight that reflected off the surface disappeared. The blue water turned dark, then darker, until eventually, there was nothing left to see. Just blackness. The kind of darkness that no human eye was ever meant to experience. Unlike climbing a mountain, or flying through the sky, there is no view in the deep ocean. No stars. No moon. No horizon. Just an endless void surrounding a small vessel no larger than a family SUV. Every meter deeper changed the environment. The temperature dropped close to freezing. The water outside hovered just above 0 degrees Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And with every passing minute, the pressure continued to rise. At just 100 meters, the ocean is already applying immense force. At 1,000 meters, it's crushing. By the time Titan approached the depth of the Titanic, the pressure outside had reached roughly 380 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. To put that into perspective, every square inch of the submersible's hull was being squeezed by thousands of pounds of force. Constantly. Relentlessly. The passengers couldn't feel that pressure directly. Inside the cabin, the air pressure remained close to normal. But they all knew one thing. The only thing separating them from instant catastrophe was the strength of the vessel surrounding them. There were no escape pods, no emergency exits, no way to swim to the surface. At that depth, even if the hatch could somehow be opened, the ocean itself would make survival impossible. The Titan also had another limitation. Unlike many large military submarines, it couldn't open its hatch from the inside. once sealed before the dive. The people on board were completely dependent on the support crew waiting on the surface. Every successful mission required precision, communication, and trust, because once the descent began, turning back wasn't always simple. Outside, tiny deep-sea creatures drifted through the darkness. Some produced faint flashes of light, a phenomenon called bioluminescence. For a brief moment, the ocean almost looked beautiful. Then the darkness swallowed everything again. As Titan continued downward, radio communication with the support ship became more limited. This wasn't unusual. Water blocks radio waves, so deep-sea submersibles rely on specialized acoustic communication systems. Those systems are slower, less reliable, and vulnerable to interruption. Still, the crew on the surface expected regular contact. Everything depended on staying connected. Then, less than 2 hours into the dive, those communications stopped. At first, no one panicked. Technical interruptions had happened before. The support team waited, listening, hoping the next scheduled message would arrive. It never did. The ocean answered with silence. A silence stretching across nearly 2.5 miles of water. Somewhere below, Titan was no longer responding. No distress signal. No emergency beacon explaining what had happened. Just nothing. And on the surface, a terrible question began to take shape. Where had Titan gone? At first, no one outside the expedition knew anything was wrong. There were no breaking news alerts. No emergency broadcasts. Just the support ship floating quietly above one of the deepest places in the Atlantic, repeatedly trying to re-establish contact with a submersible that had suddenly gone silent. The crew followed standard procedures. They sent another acoustic message. Then another. They waited. Nothing. Still. Silence. Minutes turned into nearly an hour. By now, concern was replacing confidence. Communication glitches could happen. But they usually didn't last this long. The ocean had swallowed every signal. Eventually, the support team realized this wasn't a routine delay. Something had gone terribly wrong. The U.S. Coast Guard was notified. Soon, search and rescue agencies from multiple countries began coordinating one of the most complex rescue operations in modern maritime history. Because this wasn't like searching for a lost boat on the surface. Titan could have been floating somewhere on the ocean, drifting below the surface, or resting nearly 12,500 feet down on the seabed. No one knew. And that uncertainty changed everything. Imagine trying to find a vehicle, the size of a small van, somewhere in an area larger than an entire city, hidden beneath almost 4 kilometers of water, with no GPS signal, no radio contact, and no visual clues. That was the challenge. Aircraft began scanning the Atlantic from above. Ships changed course to assist. Deep-sea experts were contacted. Specialized remotely operated vehicles, machines capable of surviving the crushing depths, were rushed toward the search area. But there was one problem. They weren't close. Some of the equipment needed to search the ocean floor was located hundreds, sometimes thousands, of miles away. Every hour spent transporting it felt painfully long. Meanwhile, the world finally learned what had happened. News outlets interrupted regular programming. Headlines spread across television, phones, and social media. Tourist submersible missing near Titanic wreck. Within hours, it became one of the biggest stories on the planet. People weren't just following the search. They were imagining what it would feel like to be inside that tiny vessel. A cramped space. No windows large enough to see much outside. No way to leave. And no certainty that anyone even knew where you were. As the search expanded, another detail began to dominate every headline. According to estimates, the submersible had only a limited supply of breathable air. Experts cautioned that these calculations depended on many unknown factors, such as the passengers' activity levels and the condition of the vessel. But the estimate quickly became the focus of public attention. Television networks displayed countdown clocks. Every passing hour felt heavier than the last. Around the world, millions of people refreshed their news feeds, hoping for one message, one signal, one sign that Titan had been found. But the Atlantic remained silent. The deeper rescuers looked, the more impossible the task seemed. Because the ocean is more than just deep. It is vast beyond comprehension. And once something disappears into that darkness, finding it can be like searching for a single grain of sand in a desert. The clock kept ticking. And with every hour that passed, hope and uncertainty existed side by side. By the second day, the search had grown into an international effort. Aircraft circled overhead. Ships drifted across the Atlantic. Some carried equipment so advanced it could detect sounds from miles away beneath the surface. Every team was searching for the same thing: a signal, a movement, anything. Then, reports began to emerge. Search crews had detected underwater noises. The news spread almost instantly. Television anchors repeated the same question over and over again. Were the people inside Titan still alive? Across social media, millions of people clung to that possibility. Maybe the noises were someone knocking. Maybe the crew had found a way to make sound against the hull. Maybe there was still time. But the truth was far more complicated. The ocean is never truly silent. It is alive with sound. Whales communicate across incredible distances. As currents shift, ships hundreds of miles away create echoes that travel through the water. Even the Earth's crust produces strange underwater noises. Experienced analysts knew one thing: hearing a sound did not automatically reveal its source. Still, the reports were enough to keep hope alive. Search teams redirected equipment toward the area where the noises had been detected. Powerful sonar systems swept the darkness. Remotely operated vehicles descended into the abyss. Their cameras pierced a world that sunlight had never touched. What those cameras saw was almost nothing: black water, fine particles drifting like snow, the occasional deep-sea creature slipping past the lights before disappearing again. Every second of video was carefully examined. Every unusual shape was investigated. Hours turned into days. The search area continued to grow. From above, the Atlantic looked endless. Below, it was even worse. The Titanic itself rested on the seafloor like a ghost from another century. Broken apart. Silent. A reminder of how easily the ocean can erase even the greatest achievements of mankind. Somewhere nearby, rescuers hoped Titan was waiting. But hope wasn't enough. Time was running out. Then another difficult reality became clear. Even if rescuers located the submersible, getting to it was only the beginning. Lifting a vessel from nearly 12,500 feet below the surface is one of the hardest engineering challenges imaginable. Nothing about this rescue would be quick. Nothing about it would be easy. Every passing hour added more uncertainty. Experts appeared on television explaining the incredible forces involved at those depths. Former submarine commanders spoke about the unforgiving nature of the deep ocean. Marine engineers discussed the risks of extreme pressure. One phrase kept coming back: the ocean doesn't forgive mistakes. And yet, millions of people refused to stop believing. Families waited. Friends waited. The world waited. Because until rescuers found definitive evidence, there was still one question no one could answer. Where was Titan? The answer was already resting thousands of feet below the Atlantic. No one knew it yet. Long before Titan ever disappeared beneath the Atlantic, some people had already been asking difficult questions. Not because they wanted the mission to fail, but because they understood something most people never have to think about. The deep ocean doesn't give second chances. Building a vessel capable of reaching the Titanic isn't like building a boat, or even an airplane. Every single dive pushes the vehicle into one of the most extreme environments on Earth. A place where the smallest weakness can become catastrophic. For decades, most deep-diving submersibles had followed a similar philosophy: heavy, slow, built with materials that had been extensively tested under immense pressure. Titan was different. Its creators wanted to challenge traditional engineering. The goal was innovation. A lighter vessel. A different approach. Technology that could make deep ocean exploration more accessible. To many people, it sounded exciting. To others, it sounded risky. Over the years, several engineers and deep-sea specialists publicly expressed concerns about the design and the certification process. Some questioned whether repeated dives to such extreme depths could gradually weaken critical components. Others believed additional independent testing would improve confidence in the vehicle's safety. It's important to remember, engineering debates like these are common whenever new technology is introduced. But after the tragedy, those earlier concerns received renewed attention. People began looking back, reading old interviews, watching conference talks, searching for clues that might explain what had happened. Around the world, one question echoed again and again: could this have been prevented? Investigators knew they couldn't answer that question with speculation. They needed evidence. Every recovered fragment mattered. Every maintenance record. Every communication. Every design document. Nothing was considered too small. Because somewhere inside thousands of pages of data, the truth was waiting. Months of technical analysis followed. Marine engineers, materials experts, government investigators. Each one examined the disaster from a different angle. The goal wasn't simply to explain what happened. It was to learn from it. Because if the cause remained unknown, the same tragedy could happen again. Meanwhile, the public couldn't stop thinking about another reality. Just hours before communication was lost, everything had seemed normal. The passengers had boarded the support ship with excitement. Families expected photos, stories, memories. No one imagined those would become their final journey together. That's what made this tragedy so haunting. There was no violent storm, no giant wave, no dramatic collision. Just an ordinary morning, followed by silence. And sometimes, silence is far more unsettling than chaos. The ocean never announced what had happened. It didn't leave behind obvious signs. It simply kept it secret until technology slowly uncovered the evidence. Even today, the Titan disaster stands as a reminder that some frontiers remain incredibly dangerous. Space is unforgiving, but so is the deep ocean. In many ways, the abyss beneath our feet is just as mysterious as the stars above us. And despite all our technology, there are still places on Earth where nature holds all the power. In the weeks that followed, the headlines slowly began to fade. News channels moved on. Social media found its next story. But for the families, time didn't move so easily. What had started as an ambitious expedition had ended in an unimaginable loss. Investigators continued their work for months. Every recovered fragment was carefully examined, not to assign blame overnight, but to understand exactly what had happened. Because in engineering, every failure leaves behind a lesson. Sometimes, that lesson comes at an unbearable cost. The Titan disaster forced the entire deep-sea exploration community to pause. Companies reviewed their safety procedures. Engineers revisited long-standing design principles. Experts once again emphasized something they had always known. The ocean doesn't reward confidence. It rewards preparation. And even then, it offers no guarantees. For centuries, people have been drawn toward places that most others avoid. The summit of Mount Everest, the frozen deserts of Antarctica, the darkness of space, and the silent world beneath the sea. Each represents the same human instinct: to explore, to discover, to go where no one else has gone. But exploration has always carried a price. History is filled with stories of explorers who accepted extraordinary risks in pursuit of knowledge. Some returned with incredible discoveries. Others never came home. The Titanic itself was once called unsinkable. In 1912, that belief ended in tragedy. More than a century later, another expedition connected to the Titanic became a reminder that the Atlantic still demands respect. Not because it is evil, not because it is cursed, but because nature doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about ambition, or money, or reputation. The laws of physics remain the same. Every single day, thousands of feet beneath the surface, the wreck of the Titanic still rests exactly where it has for over 100 years. Steel slowly dissolves into rust. Deep-sea creatures move silently through its corridors. The ocean continues its work, patiently, without emotion, without witnesses, and somewhere nearby, the remains of Titan became part of that same landscape. A quiet reminder of how fragile human technology can be when faced with one of Earth's most extreme environments. Perhaps that's the most unsettling part of this entire story. Not the headlines, not the countdown, not even the search. It's the realization that, despite everything we've achieved, there are still places on this planet where we're visitors. Places where one small mistake can have irreversible consequences. The deep ocean is one of those places. It has inspired legends, swallowed ships, protected secrets for centuries. And even today, scientists estimate that we've explored only a small fraction of it. There are mountains beneath the sea taller than anything on land. Vast underwater canyons, volcanoes, entire ecosystems that exist in complete darkness. The abyss remains one of the last true frontiers on Earth. Beautiful, mysterious, and utterly unforgiving. There is something about the deep ocean that has always fascinated us. Maybe it's because we know so little about it. Or maybe it's because the darkness forces us to confront something we rarely think about: how small we really are. On maps, the Atlantic looks ordinary, a stretch of blue connecting continents. But beneath those calm waves, there is another world. A world where sunlight has never reached, where the water is only a few degrees above freezing, where every square inch is under crushing pressure. A place that existed long before humans, and will remain long after we're gone. When the passengers boarded Titan that morning, They weren't chasing danger for its own sake. They were chasing discovery. A chance to witness one of history's most iconic shipwrecks with their own eyes. That desire, to explore the unknown, is part of what has driven humanity forward for centuries. It has taken us across oceans, to the highest mountains, and into space. But every frontier demands respect. The deep sea is no exception. Unlike the surface, the ocean doesn't offer second chances. If something fails at those depths, there is no time to react, no opportunity to escape, only the unyielding laws of nature. The investigation into Titan continues to inform engineers and explorers, helping shape future deep-sea missions. Every lesson learned has the potential to make future exploration safer. The tragedy also reminded the world of something easy to forget. Technology can achieve extraordinary things, but it cannot eliminate risk, especially in places where the environment is more powerful than anything we've ever built. Even now, more than a century after the Titanic slipped beneath the Atlantic, people remain drawn to that lonely wreck. It has become more than a ship. It is a symbol of ambition, of innovation, of loss, and of the ocean's immense power. Nearby, the story of Titan has become part of that same history, not as a mystery filled with monsters or myths, but as a real reminder of what can happen when humans venture into one of Earth's most extreme environments. Perhaps that's why this story continues to capture the world's attention, because it isn't just about a submersible or a famous shipwreck. It's about the oldest question humanity has ever asked. What's out there? Sometimes we find incredible answers. Sometimes we discover just how much we still don't know. And sometimes the greatest mystery isn't what lies at the bottom of the ocean. It's why we keep returning to it. As the Atlantic rolls on above the Titanic, nothing on the surface reveals the silence below. Ships continue to pass. Waves rise and fall. The sun reflects across the water, completely unaware of the history resting nearly 12,500 feet beneath them. The ocean keeps its secrets well. It always has, and perhaps it always will, because in the end, the deepest places on Earth don't need monsters to be terrifying. Reality is frightening enough.